They can come even down here. There's quite a lot of space down here. And those that cannot fit in, we are streaming this lecture, and everybody has the stream on the web pages and the social media. So good evening once more. I would like to welcome our guests first this time, His Excellency the Ambassador of Netherlands, Mr. Dan Huizinga, and Regina Lokotova, the Rector of Archip, and Winy Maas and his Y Factory team, which is Javier Arpa Fernandez, Adriana Ramon, and Lex Telou. Dear students, colleagues, and architecture friends, welcome to the opening of the 7th November Talks in Prague. The lecture series started at this faculty by Zdeněk Zavřel years ago, and it is a lecture series on contemporary architecture which takes place every November thanks to the initiative and funding of the Sto Foundation. Parallel to our Prague lectures, November Talks are just now happening also in 5 other schools of architecture in 5 cities: Stuttgart, Graz, Venice, Paris, and London. And you can access information about them through the website of the Sto-Stiftung.de. As many of you know, our November Talks are always dedicated to a certain overall theme. After the theme of visions in 2018 and transformations in 2019, we explored the theme of taking risks in 2021. This year, the theme we chose is futures, time for a change. We think that with the advent of digital technologies, many new concepts in architecture and urbanism were developed in the last 30 years, leading to new possibilities of performance and efficiency in design, realization, and the use of our buildings and cities. All of that in order to achieve a climate-neutral world by mid-21st century. Our vision of a smart future full of smart cities and smart buildings was recently abruptly shocked by the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russian-Ukrainian war, and the accelerating climate change. The extent of human and natural suffering occurring simultaneously in various parts of our planet has revealed the deeper problems and inequalities within societies around the world than we were previously aware of. This situation forces us to radically reassess our current priorities and models in proportion to our shrinking capabilities and accelerate the need to work harder, faster, for a better, sustainable, healthy, and resilient planet. The question we are as architects facing is, how do we imagine this better future? Winy Maas, MVRDV, and the Y Factory is our first speaker, and because he is also the visiting professor for this academic year, I would like to ask our Dean, Mr. Dalibor Hlavacek, to introduce him. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so very happy to see our students in this lecture hall. I haven't seen it so packed in months. And I'm also very happy to see our professors here and also Deans Emeriti, Professor Zavřel and Professor Labus. My speech is very short because I think you're not curious what I'm saying. I think you're curious what Winy will say. But just to make it short, when I came into office last year, one of the first things I did is that I set up a permanent visiting professor studio. The aim of the studio was to attract inspirational personalities from abroad, to bring in new topics and new methods to Faculty of Architecture. And I'm very thrilled and honored that Winy Maas took this challenge and accepted to be the first one. I'm very excited and thank you for being here. Not only you, but also your great team from the Y Factory who gives a lot of effort into this studio. I'm also very thankful for the Kingdom of Netherlands and his ambassador who gave patronage over this visiting studio, which is actually a tradition of a fruitful cooperation between Faculty of Architecture and the Kingdom of Netherlands. So it's also very symbolic that the first visiting professor is from the Netherlands. I think you know Winy, so I don't need to introduce him very much. But before I give the word to him, I would, on behalf of the rector of the CTU, like to give him the degree of a visiting professor. And I'm very much looking forward to your lecture and also to the whole year with the Y Factory and Winy here on the faculty. The floor is yours.
Děkuji. Dobrý den. But that are the only words I know for the moment in Czech. So the rest I will do in English, so to be honest. But you asked me to deal with you, dear members of this academic environment, as a start of thinking with you on the future city. And the best question that I can always ask, and it's embodying, I think, everybody of this community, is what is next? Huh? And how to deal with that, what's next is. It will take 1.5 hours so to bring you through. So there are still some seats here, 3 and 4, so if you want to go down, that's up to you. I will take you to 8 chapters to steer you through this logic, as I hope, this series of argumentation to think about future and to give it somehow like a step-by-step method. First, a long introduction I will give. It is at the very moment that we speak, 7th of November 22, I have to think what is now. I see indeed, as Irena was saying, a war around us. I see an enormous drought appearing in our planet, and especially in Europe, that leads to a lack of water. I mean, places like the Netherlands look like Tuscany these days, and our rivers look like this. It causes fires, other ways of dealing with our agriculture. There's an energy crisis, even a crunch. And we somehow protest, but we have to deal with it in a constructive manner. There's a supply chain crisis where our building industry is not able to process on time so many stuff. And yes, there's an economic crisis where inflation holds us in our grip towards the future. But there's also an aging crisis. The future is yours. But in general, you have to pay for my generation, which is terrible. And last but not least, there's a nitrogen crisis. Not maybe here in Czech Republic, but in the denser zones in Europe, you can see that nature is somehow winning of other functions by declaring a no to certain functions that surround our nature areas. And yes, there's a governance crisis. With so many things, fear is there, uncertainty is there, how to lead Europe in that way, and how to deal with this kind of newcomers that are surrounding in our place. And at that very moment that this is happening, this book comes after so many years, that the Club of Rome tried to somehow talk about all of this. Limits of the Growth was the title of those moments. And I can advise you to look at this publication, where now so many years after it, they try to see why it didn't happen, why these warnings were not taken that serious, why we still in a world of losers and winners that is actually growing much more. And where actually a radical diversity is a must, according to some of the articles, in order to balance our uncertainty and to create somehow a resilience economically, socially, and ultimately biologically to deal with that. In one of the pleats of this Club of Rome, it says how to live at peace with this ball, with this sphere, with this globe. How to live in peace with nature. And some of you will immediately say, oh, we do that. We have great national parks, so we are safe. We have, but is that true? Why do you drive so much? And why is this electric car not there here so much in the Czech Republic? One could wonder, as a kind of first observation. So in these days of crisis, we need to work on all of these things, I would say. And we need to show some kind of hope, and that takes some courage to make relevant beauties, I would say, that captivate attention all over the world, and that ridiculize crudeness. And somehow we have to find that in different ways of expression. So what is next? Let me take you to the chapter, because I came into CTU. At the same moment that this is happening, I get this now, and I get this announcement, and I thank you for that, because it somehow celebrates also a long relationship that I have with the Czech Republic. When I was already 23, I sat in buses up to Olomouc to measure all the modernistic architecture. I went in every house of Baba to understand a little bit the logics behind that modernism. And with some of your colleagues at that very moment. And that continued, it has not stopped in its way. So that's nice. But if I do that, and I see what is happening, and I went, say, in June, to look at CTU, and I came in this kind of bustling building, where emptiness was glorified at that very moment. I think it was a specific day, but some people say it could need a boost. There was an exhibition going on at that very moment, which is beautiful, that you show all the things you do. Transparency is an enormous aspect of the academic development of our work. So you see houses, you see more houses. Hey, Baba is back. I see more houses. Whoa, am I in a kind of specialism? Is everything about housing in your faculty? At the moment that this kind of things, the bigger pictures are appearing to us. So what is next then? I see also a certain, why do I come then? I'm not I love houses, but is that now what we have to worry only about? At the very moment, I think some things are growing in and around Czech Republic. Your presidency of the EU, I hope it gives its fruit of people that come here, of saying things to the European community. And this is your agenda in that epoch. I hope it leads to a kind of EU agency in the reconstruction of Ukraine. This would be the safest, of course, to be it, not to place it in Hungary excuse me, Mr. Ambassador, but I'm in your territory, but there is what would complete to. And it's nice to see, if you look to the map of agencies in in Europe, then this part of Europe could deserve some concentration and some work on that way. Yes, there are more competitions recently also in your republic, which is nice, and in your area. And I will show some of them, because also I'm openly, I can have to show my things, and it helps a little bit also to discuss it, because discussions are not always very visible, as I notate with these competitions, to be honest. Here one, National Opera in Pristina. This is not in the Czech Republic, but close by, where this kind of, say, mishmash is called a city. But here there is beautiful, say, buildings like this library that is there. And on this given site, with the natural contours, we had to locate the back of house and insert a rehearsal to place the main theater and to create a generous public foyer, and then make a roof as a big urban amphitheater that opens itself where needed, and that leads to this kind of access and this kind of extension of the park. And this is the image of Pristina, where this tribune somehow appears at that moment in this mishmash, with this kind of crown overlooking the city. It is, I would say, the biggest seat or couch that I can give to the city, and that leads to this kind of, say, the new steps, sorry, not the Italian steps in Rome, but this kind of Pristina steps upwards. What's next after winning this one? 2021, the Philharmonic in Belgrade. You see, there is kind of movement going on in the center of Europe where you love culture more. I loved with a D, the Philharmonic in Belgrade. Why? Because the director made an aggressive effort to put classical music on the agenda with a fascinating website, where these films are shown endlessly to make communication with the environment, with a campaign that's in Belgrade, which is like, wow, now I want to go to the Sinfonietta, or how to play outside, how to use media to express a little bit what is happening in an opera, and then to be with everybody playing in that environment. That is an example that can come out of a place that emerges, I would say, from a Dutch perspective. So if this is Belgrade, it has two places. On the right side, the classical Belgrade. On the left side, the Neo-Beograd. And you could divide it by by the river. You see classicness and new classicness appearing in this area. And then on this kind of infrastructure with this proud elements that are there for better and for worse, on that place you have to make this Philharmonic. Wow, that's a good idea. How to enliven such a kind of place, how to react to that. And on one hand, I like that kind of area is different than the classic town, let's be honest. And the only thing is maybe that you should maybe use that language, but then to speak out more loudly to activate the whole theater on that moment. So on the foundations, we programmed all the blocks and all the theaters were done then. We shift them apart a little bit to create an extra space. The lobby becomes also a piece of theater that makes a kind of effort to talk. Then you have the theaters, the classical one, and then you can continue with, maybe I can make something classic. Maybe I can make like a building that is like an amplifier almost on this meadow with a rack that communicates with the surrounding on every level. So that is what it could be, and this is how it could function, and how it could be in the park as in the woofer of the year, one would say, and to express then that this is what you are talking about, and that this is the space that the lobby itself is maybe the best theater, but of course make beautiful halls where you believe in the romantics of the backside of these halls, or in the night feeling during a concert. It is as if this building tries to learn from the lessons from Centre Pompidou and to create kind of an active communicator with the environment, so that somehow it uses the language of that Neo-Beograd in a much more neo way, is what it wants to see. So we lost. Why? He died just 2 weeks after we handed in. And this was a building dedicated to him, in a way. So this is the tragedy of time and of future. There is always our kind of heaps, and I come back to that later in the talk. And what is then taken over? If such a courage comes into it, then with all the respect, this is now what's going to be built. Soft, Danish, bit corporate, elegant, but I'm not sure if when you have such a history that you are going into this kind of, say, generic direction. So what is next? 2010, a while ago, Prague, Bubny. What was for Orko at that moment? Look at the city, look at the void that is partly still there on the way, and how to deal with that. I still want to remember you of that moment, that this is how it looks like between Holosovice and Letna, and then this kind of emptiness comes in, and let's make any connection possible. Any street, toop, 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 and you have, this is immediately cool and deserves. And if you if you start to do this, I can simply do this. I can do a kind of hyper Prague. That is using the language of it, but with every plot is nice. Every plot, the developer has a problem. One could say, a triangle, how to do that, nightmare. So how to build this flinter. But we have to challenge our beloved friends in order to make it more possible. And then you throw in some stones. An old hospital, no problem. We lift it in that moment. A new mountain to copy Letna is why not? And then it's changed gradually into such a kind of composition with this kind of elements. Sometimes history repeats itself. And in places where planning takes time, and I think I have to admit that Czech Republic takes time for certain kind of processes. I say it friendly, no? Don't ruin my career yet. But then this is 5 years later. Wow, it comes through. But then, of course, in an optimized way. All square blocks and no surprise in it, in a way. And that was then the stage set for 22 when the Philharmonic competition comes into picture. So there's the place in the backdrop. These monsters that are coming in, and what do? Of course, we try to make at that moment a better connection with the river. We spread this deck over it and lead it to the metro entrance. We open up the dike with all the trains that are underneath, and we make this connection everywhere. Then this is the program that you have seen also in the winter, where these halls take up almost 80% of the plot. Whoa. That's bigger than the blocks, that's fair. But couldn't we compactize it in a way by stacking them on top of each other? That leads to this infrastructure on -1, on a socle of schools, on a floating, say, platform of theaters, and then ultimately this restorative domain on top. You hang out the auditorium, put the infrastructure in, and then you make the structure, and you do a kind of echo. What is a nicer word for an opera or a philharmonic, is surrounding it that creates tribunes everywhere. Inside, outside, to be together in the most compact volume thinkable, where these voids are expressing itself. It's covered by pieces of glass and solar panels that make stairs inside and outside to climb this rock, this crystal rock, and how it is combined in this horizon. Here's this kind of, I think, most Czech element that I could make, and throwing that in your place. They told me, the jury, that it was not Czech at all. It was a kind of UFO that landed in. This is culturally interesting, because that's why I raised the point. How to interpret these elements, while on the other hand, you create this kind of new gardens, the music gardens. Man creates endless stairs and tribunes so that you can look to each other and talk about each other, where it surrounds these amphies and then lead to the viewpoints on different occasions. Soft. Big, yes, very true. And how this echo is embedded in it. This is what you get, maybe. And to look at it, it's smart, let me be honest, to my colleagues. And it's simply standing, it's a box with a good roof, one could say, how that evolves in it. What's next, 2022? I take you to Brno, and that was a while ago. And I love this project, so I want to explain it a little bit, because communication, as long as I understand, as a non-check your communication, is not always very clear or very thorough. So in this case, who knows this and why has this come that far? On this very site, next to the central station, surrounded by the biggest traffic node of Czech Republic, in this kind of empty land, there this institute has to be settled. An institute that wants to think about the past and maybe the future of minorities, of a Jewish community, and later on with more that are coming into your country and are and because of many processes that are going on. Again, some words on the site. As it is it's on this part of the city plan, next to all the cultural amenities and pedestrian connections, as part of the green, no, not whole green area, with this beautiful Ringstraße monuments that are there. It is taking part in a concept to talk about that history. And this history is indeed very double-sided. On one hand, you feel guilty. On the other hand, you don't feel guilty at all. That's intriguing, how to see how that happened in Brno. Brno is then some kind of extra, because the city is quite dominated by the richer part of the Jewish class that formed the industries, and that took basically, I would say, 30% of the city to structure it in all its wings, from synagogues to cemeteries to factories in different modes that gradually are becoming to be reused. And that leads to one of your most beautiful projects that you have ever made in the Tugendhat Villa. But then everybody is gone on the space. So there's no Jew is living in Brno anymore. I think they were gone, and the soil was expatriated or taken over initially by the Germans and later by your communist government in a way, and that erased that piece of. So I understand that you say, okay, let's memorize it, and better than only such a thing somewhere in a small park to do that study, not only to think about what happened, but also can we create a Europe even more where we love biodiversity. It is, if there's one piece of the planet that somehow expresses that, then it's this funny juxtaposition of countries that needs to develop each other together. There's a second part, which I think is in Moravia quite interesting, because it's not only Brno. Actually, almost every city or community has larger, say, communities of Jewish nature, like this one or like this one. And if I compare then I think about architecture of such a specific enterprise, that is different than making a house. There are millions of houses, so you can compare them. But what to do on the Holocaust, I didn't have any, say, connection with that. I had to familiarize. So let's visit some of the Holocaust institutes over the world. This is typically Holocaust Institute architecture, one could say. This one also. Here another one. I really find that most of the institutes are hiding themselves in neutrality. Actually, the hiding factor is more than it should. Come on, you have to yell out this issue. Why do you hide this in such a kind of neutrality? Okay, there's a program that is about research, and there is a plot. And the plot is too cute because so that means basically, and here you see it on the last part, that you have to build up minimally 4 levels, 4 levels to do it. Which is, okay, that's how it is. And we try to work on this project, on making a veil, showing the duality of this subject, both, say, how it is in your country, on denying and opening it, of welcoming and getting rid of. It is a veil that is also in the architecture and in the way how we have to think about it. So we thought that it might be good to make it kind of track towards Moravia. You start with the program, you make a compact say, footprints, so that you have a garden where you can pass the traffic, and you blend, say, and you bring it up to the top floor, where we can make Moravia. We can make a map over there that stretches out, and that you can, where you walk on it, you can look over the city and see what Olomouc did or not did at that moment. And to express that on that map, it becomes our device then to deal with all that processes. And by hazard, by coincidence, you get then this stretch. It is as if neutrality, avoidance, one could say, das andere, somehow stretches out to the specificness, to the site. And then these are the communities where Jewish people made their elements. If you don't make that as windows in this glass roof, as extra windows, and you stretch them to the bottom, then somehow I can make this kind of cupola in the very entrance, that when I look up, I see that community somehow already there in this void shape. And here how it touches the skin, how in these elements you can travel by elevators and by stairs, how you pass by in this process the different floors and end at that supported map with the gardens that surround it in this section that comes alive. Here, that's the apparatus of this paradox that you are doing. On one hand it's there, on one hand it disappears, on the other hand it comes. It is what this trajectory wants to show, all from the bottom to the top.
And action.
This is a small movie of The Office. How here the effect could be seen in that way from coming in, and how it would lead to a map above, and how if you turn it, that you would see it from below in this new kind of cupola. A cupola, that thinks a little bit about some of the classic architecture in Czech Republic, but it faces then that combination. And with that element put on Moravian soil, I think you have somehow a trajectory between the past, between the city as it is, and heaven on top, to look to what had happened before. If I make a sequence around it, then this would be the veil that unveils that situation from the beginning as a lantern in the city, how it would be there, opening it up itself, leading to these cupolas, and then leading through this cones to the top where it disappears in the map of Moravia that is pointing towards the different directions of the city and the environment. Again, we lost. That's how architectural tragedy is. Normally you have to deal with it, you bet on some of the elements. But I learned a lot about your country and about the winner, the Japanese entry, a little bit more neutral in the best tradition, and a little bit more not so expressive, let me say that in that way. It's a choice of your wise, say, colleagues. So what's next? I notate also an emerging energy in, not only here, but also in Central Europe, and we need that. So I will illustrate that, what I call with the Tirana tales. When I ask some people in Czech Republic about Tirana, they have no clue what Tirana is. Isn't that country where they are bribing everybody and where washing is happening, where corruption is the center? So let me try to give it a chance, because that is what this puzzle of Europe is showing. This is a map of the wealth in the world. So in general you see some light colors in Africa and in Mongolia, but there also Albania is on that part. A while ago, and it has the lowest GDP of Europe, and how to deal that. What's before? So who to be blamed? Is what it. I don't know if I can Hoxha, the dictator, I can blame him completely on that. But it's good to look at him, how he, as a partisan, developed his career in the Second World War, how he came out of it with it, how he started to work as an independent country. I find it one of the most funny histories in the that I can imagine, where he could reign for 40 years. where he made basically the population love him, where he collaborated with all the political leaders in the world. Every decennium, another hero that he invited to participate in his operation, and that ended up with Mao on that moment. And he built millions of these protectors. A lot of social housing. You have to give him credits. That's worse now in Czech Republic and in the Netherlands. He made a university. He made an army, and the army was not so kind. He made a lot of places where you could be killed, and and then he loved, of course, his own beach and his villa, which becomes soon a museum, where he stayed over with his wife, that were like working together very hard. And then he died, and he left himself a mausoleum that became this pyramid, and a series of monuments in gloral photography, how that would celebrate, say, the beauty of Tirana. So what's next? 92. Chaos came into after his death, and people started to get rid of the different, say, statues of him, and left the traces where he was there. How strong can such a reaction be measured? That led in 2001 to an attempt to reorganize a little bit. And an artist became Minister of Culture, for better and for worse. You see him at that very moment, and painted basically some of the social housing as an act of organizing. I think that was a beautiful way of saying we have to change a little bit. And what is the next? 2004, he became mayor, and where he cleaned up this mess from left to right, or this river water system, or he planted simply trees to get it a little bit. It's very contemporary, you can say. That is what is happening. Then he became prime minister. What a career to be, and still staying as an artist. And what he did that, you start to work, not only with him, but with more people that wanted to canalize this energy for better and for worse. I remember my first project in Tirana, City Tower, 2002. On that corner there, it looked like this, and then they asked me, can you do also a painting like they did for... So we did it. I love Tirana, to underline a little bit the direction, but they chose for this one because the flag is one of the sexiest of Europe in a way, design-wise. Secondly, this building that is where we developed with all the users, were not yet owners. The ownership emerged from that into this kind of appearance. So I didn't get more than like 2,000 euros for the whole commission, but it was like nice to start with. What's next? 2004, the Toptani. On this spot, they were asked to make a market hall, because we made a market hall in Rotterdam, and some shops and some offices. So we made this market hall by using the shops in the beam, you could say, like that, and put some grass over it, and it would look like this, is what it meant. The jury thought it was Zaha who won. Who was this? So that's why they chose. So I had the luck that once I did a kind of comparison with Zaha Hadid, that I could win a competition. They were in a way happy it was not Zaha in the end, because the concrete quality at that moment was B15, I think. So maybe pebbles like this, and how to do that. So no, then the engineer said, maximum 2-meter cantilever per floor. Okay, and then you do it and you get this. So that's actually quite okay, we thought. This is a good translation of, say, Zaha Hadid into MVRDV. So that was kind of, and that happens here. You can make stairs to the top. You have a beautiful, say, entrance here, how it looks like. These halls, and how we can use old glass from the country to stuff it up. So what is next? I was surprised that belongs with that growing, with this change in a country, that there was an architect that has taken over. I never got a call or an email about that, and was there. A little bit changed in different weather, but it was built, closing things that I hate. But anyway, it was there. Now let's see progress or futurism in an evolutionary way. That means for you also as students, sometimes you have to pick your battles, be accepted, see it in this kind of hopefully progressive mood, because it's already nicer. 2015, we were asked by a developer to work on the tower on this spot. You see the part from what is the effect of towers, and that becomes now the core of the tales of Tirana. Is like you are on Skanderbij Square, designed by Italian architect in the 20s, and then every tower has an impact. So this is our tower at that moment that would do. Okay, fine. What do you do then in that? So we said let's put the tower towards the plaza as a kind of point of gravity, so that wherever you are, you do something on this togetherness of the tower. So here you see the site, how it was, how we pushed it in that direction. We started to work on a structure of pixels of houses, and we pushed them in and out, and made somehow this kind of emerging country to give it again in the best tradition of their sculptural architecture, to put that in that range, and then you pixelize it with the facades, and then you have this object that somehow say, "Hi, world, here's Albania," and that wants to, with the lowest GDP, works on this kind of development with houses like that, where you can become a neighborhood of every element that works on this sculpture. So what is next? It was too red, and so we have to make it white. Fine. That's also part of the dialogue that comes into this perspective, and that is there on the market. So what is next is I will look in the beginning of this year. After the earthquake, they found out that all the stones in Albania are too soft. That's correct there. So at the moment that you put it in a high-rise, 140 meters, tuk, 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 and they fall up. 2 people were killed already in another place. So the government said, no stones anymore. So this is what we have now. They crack, and we use them only in the lower floors, and have to make a gradient towards lighter panels, aluminum panels, which are photographed and turns into a fake nature stone element. How bad is that? Is the question. Or actually is a token of honesty that we could imagine. So I take you to a visit recently to it. Walk on the market, and I see the sculpture appearing. Still the scaffolding over there. I bring you into the apartment, what it gives. First, it gives indeed a terrace. And if you go out, then the vertigo fear is lower, because you can have a terrace next door, another person, you can give the beer or the wine. Further, here's how far you fall in certain cases. So it makes it a little bit more inhabitable, this juxtaposition of, and it turns it into a neighborhood. That's what you can see here, of different expressions. And then you get this expression which is there. And yes, it talks with Skanderbij Square. And by this, you can see now the picture how it is. And what is next? 2 days ago. Of course, it's Christmas starts, also like here. So he put on, my client, only the lamps in the Albanian map. I always warned him, no. The figurative has an abstraction factor. I come back to that later, because it's a kind of vulnerable element, to be honest on it. And they see it here, but actually, it is this what it does as an effect towards the city. So what's next? Skanderbij, the former hero of the country that saved Albania from this weird position between, say, Turkish and European or German forces, becomes gradually, I think, a fascinating next dimension. There was a plan, a French urbanist made this strict order of towers. The reality is different, and actually maybe more exciting. This is what happened already in these last 10 years. How many towers come there? Not only of us, don't worry. There are many. Stefano Boeri makes one. But there are Italian architects, French architects, participating Belgians are there in a beautiful collection. I would say this is the Tirana collection coming up at that moment. So what can we then contribute? Here you see how the main street is happening, how you see the center appearing with the new towers, and I turn my head and I see how this collection is appearing. Wow, that's courageous. How long do you talk about the tower here? And to make it there, and then you put them outside preferably, while you have some of the most beautiful towers made on the planet in Žižkov. So what can I imagine that here is happening? This shows that energy to do something. So we're asked also to make one. Here you see the next step, and that is on that spot, and it should also again contribute to the series of sculptures. So there was a discussion: can we also make the figurative into a tower? Oh my God, that's a different logic. That's not like what you normally do, but what happens? Let's see, look at it. This is the tower. This is how it adapts to the site, and how we can imagine that it could show a little bit the figures of the past, only by plates like Escher would have done. It is as if somehow this character looks a little bit to his country, like in a very melancholic way, I would say. The eyes are very melancholic in the end. That does lead to this configuration that looks now to his disciples in that sense. Over the edge or on the edge is the question. If everything is, how can we make characterful and contextual components that deal a little bit with the specificity of the site, with the culture, history, in this case, of their architecture, that is very sculpture in that mode. Is it allowed to do that? Europe should give space for these experiments. That's what I can say. I know that architects can have a kind of culture of condemnation. If someone does something, bang, there you go. And you call your journalist friends, and then you are out. Happily, we are currently on the social media a lot, and then you have an open discussion. I will show that later. So here it is, and the construction at the very moment. Because you don't have to wait, with a beautiful building next door. How it is, how you can see it happening and behind the scaffolding, and how, say, the houses are formed by this information. What is next? Halo is coming in, 2021. It's actually Skander 2, because the neighbor, that's the nice thing about this formation of density and making something special in a place, it pops up. I want to do that also. And so that is then what's happening behind it. Here you can see what the spot is behind Skander, how we can make the offset, how we can bake the tower and do an imprint of our fellow in that way, open it up, and we can do a kind of, say, nice, say, landing of this environment. So when this is that situation, it becomes like that. And how it becomes part of an ensemble. They react on top of each other. So here you can see this side, and how the halo is working, and how you can make more streets full of restaurants and plazas that are surrounding these towers. That's another process than New York, how it happened. So here you have a very active, I would say, discussion on what it could be. So what is next? I take you to this place. If the formation of such a kind of center is a process, I think now also the cultural amenities are taking place. And there are lots of them. BIG makes something, there's OMA makes something. So on this plot, stop, pull back. I add one tower before we go further. And that's on this spot. So also here the next neighbor is doing and wants to make a needle, the needle of Tirana, to show it in that way. Not so high. Let's say 150 in the end, and then to show it, how can we use that also, that needle then to reflect on Tirana. So we make a glass, like in Schijndel we did that, we print it in, and we make a picture of the existing situation on that level, on that height. You can do it by drones, so it's all easy to do. And somehow, wow, here Tirana implodes and comes together in one image that when you walk around, on the back you see the mountains, on the back you see the sea, on the back, and the windows are embedded in this and create this kind of momentum in it. And that it continues. This is not the last one, and for many of my colleagues to do it. Now the cultural component, because you talk about like how to canalize money, and I know how much is whitewashing, I don't know, or how much is, where is the corruption, I come back to that later. So now in 2016, there was a discussion on what to do with this. There was a moment that it was taken over by young people, especially, that slided down, sometimes with some issues, that some hurt elements, and how to do that then. So in the discussion, what do you do with such a kind of monument? Shall we erase it? Some people say. I'm not sure. Shall we completely make it, repair it completely? No, Cyrus. So somehow in that process of discussion with many of the intellectuals of Albania, there was this choice to somehow inhabit this situation. Inhabit it with a school, inhabit it with new functions. And repair then the possibility that everybody can go on top by stairs and a lift to the top, by maybe some gliders, and by inhabiting that and connecting it, and by opening it further to turn it into an open space that would then lead to such a kind of inhabited monument. It was too much, of course. But on the other hand, it helped to direct a little bit the discussion between the haters and the lovers, so I could say. And so I feel like a psychologist, basically, to work on that. So what is next? Here you see what is happening. The existing situation, we open it up, clean it up. Tiles are really bad, and how to keep it connected with the stairs, not everyone, because one we kept as a slider, and add the school inside. Connect the landscape through it. We filtrate the microclimate with the scoops that are fixed on it, and we turn it into a public pyramid, inside and outside. And then you inhabit it with a school inside and outside. Craftsmen, young generation, techno generation comes in to celebrate that in the park that's completely reconstructed and on the top. And that leads to this element, this suggestion, inside and outside. So here's a small film. I didn't do it, but that's Albania style within music. Tear-jerking, of course. Remember, students, you have always to make films without sun, because then people believe you better. So, here are the scopes that are there. And the view. First public view in Albania. What's next? February 21, AD opens the pyramid, and we start getting rid of all the elements. The statue was away. You can't find it. But we have a spot later to make him, if wished, he can be there again. There was a big discussion on how, that kind of outrage, how to do that. One, I'm considered as a foreigner, so that means my situation, even if I'm European, is of course an issue. But on purpose to have an open or international discussion could be helpful, and was explained what we did at. So we explained thoroughly this process in order to, there is always a choice, and how to balance the choice. What is a democratic choice? You should have maybe had a referendum, like Switzerland does, or not, but that was not yet the case. And what is the situation these weeks again? So here, the park with the settlements are coming of the different, we split the school and all its functions in different elements. And yes, this is of course the room like this, that is somewhere sprawled in the park. We go to the pyramid, the stairs are there, I can go up and I'm on the star that's on that roof and look over the city. I can go inside, I see how gradually these boxes are maneuvered in this outside space where you can walk around up to the top. And how then also the slider is still there. So what's the next? Discussion on colors. Of it should be more colors, like in the best tradition of Albania. At this very moment, we decided for a rainbow, how to be inclusive, and to tame them down. Not so Dutch, I would say, more southern, to have this kind of connection that is then spread over it. A big tombola in discussion, who gets red and who gets green of the neighbors, and ended up in this composition that is leading to this composition, and will be there in a couple of months. So what is next? Some thoughts.
In these nearly 8 decades, we have witnessed uninterrupted change.
AD speaks to the UN.
Transformation. unprecedented mobilization, continued solidarity, and an old-time imperative of the need to work together. As a result, the world has known undeniable progress on many tracks. On the other hand, we must never forget that our journey has been bumpy. Many times, we have also witnessed terrible setbacks and even reversal of progress.
So, trying to explain basically the operation, I find it very courageous. I wish that Mark would give such a speech, my ambassador, in New York in the nearby future, to talk about that time, whatever it is, and as a kind of dwarf in our environment, this might help. And this is 2 days ago in the Netherlands, about AD. Are we ready for the EU? No. Honestly, we're not. We have a brain drain in Albania. People leave. Architects don't stay there and go to other places. How to make a university that is sexy, attractive, and innovative is an issue. About corruption, yes, it's there, but there are more court cases, than per person than in Czech Republic these days. They act quicker, and yes, there are people now condemned as criminals, which is a matter of hope. And then, Mr. President, Rama was asked, what do you think now about your situation? He felt to be blessed within Europe, but indeed one of the nicest cultural heritage in the world, and a project that doesn't know yet its equivalence, this Europification. And last question, what can Albania add to Europe? And I love this question. A sense of humor would helpful to relativate our situation. Wow, this, I must say, can happen sometimes in your country also. This was my introduction. So now let me go to the second chapter, and that unravels then the trajectory, I hope, of the future in a more theoretical way. So here I will go. First, some word on the actors. MVRDV, some of you know, these are the people we work with. This is our places where we work and our existence and our projects. Then the Y Factory, some of them are here, made in Delft with this tribune to invite people to speak out. I think that's the best culture that we can activate in our environment. And every day when with our students in this week, we are working on it. The speaking out is a way of thinking, is a way of making decisions thinkable. It's a time to make models that paint the future, that paint the research that is needed, and to publicize as much as possible, to share the knowledge that we do, and to talk, yes, with all these people that make our environment. You should be active. To also go into politics. Don't worry, you will not be eaten. You are so powerful in your discussions to do that, and that's what we try to do. We only want, I think also it's nice in the academic world to concentrate. So I know that research is needed. And in bachelor, you're able to develop a kind of supermarket of knowledge by giving all the professions a role. In the masters, I think the place for research should be given to experience that, to take it with you with the bigger questions of our times. We concentrate on the future city, not more, not less. And how do you study that? So here you see a triangle of how we do that. The most important is the model. An abstract city, average European, no name, with an average program. And one parameter, you show it on that city and it changes. If we have only flying cars in the future, that goes like this. So that is how this model zone is developed. Secondly, of the viewer, where we look a little bit to the situation as we face. And in our studio here, we are doing that. We look to the Czech Republic. We contextualize, for better and for worse, in the situation. I come back to that later. We work, and then the last chapter is the controller. That's basically, is it the open source? It's the parameters that you have. You put them in order, and then you gain knowledge. I believe in computer science, in scripting, in Grasshopper, and all that surrounds it. And you have a very good department here at the school that can mobilize you, can help you to master a little bit the complexity of this kind of quests. Then we work, yes, in many, not only in Prague, but also in Melbourne, also in Zurich, in order to, or in Barcelona, to work with each other, because you cannot do it alone. I think collaboration is so important that to hear and learn about it and to be criticized. And that leads to publications. This is a series that, and I'm happy that your school is also contributing to 1 or 2 volumes in the coming year on the projects that we try to do here to make it more visible and to extend it. In that way also it gives something for students also to, it's not only in my closet, it's also out there. And yes, in a complex research you have other kind of roles. You behave more like a team, like a filmmakers group, where in the end the whole role, who did what, is explaining these operations. You cannot do it only on yourself, is what it says. And then the future SIPI itself. Now we go into the content, after all the methodological component and the introduction. This balances, obviously, to use and paraphrase some of your thinkers, of a world between utopia and dystopia. We cannot, and let me go into dystopia first. Because normally if you make an observation on a future of a city, you use trends. Gradually it becomes that. Gradually it needs more green, or gradually it needs more discussion or on elements. Trends, but trend breaks become more and more important in our society because we want to be resilient. So and how can we do that? For the Dutch government, we showed shocks in our thinking, shocks in planning. Trend breaks is what it could do. That lead to this book, where, say, this design of shock or anti-shock design, the resilient moving comes in. It is always with fear. Fear and spatial planning has an enormous relationship. Because, no, don't build too high. It's the no factor that more reigns our cities than the yes factor, somehow. That's weird. I'll come back to that also later. Fear of waste, fear of losing, fear of sprawl, everything. That's the fear of power, fear of climate change, fear of recession. That makes this. And then the trends are there. Trend breaks, as I spoke. And we try to imagine different trend breaks in order to understand if we need to adapt. So there were a couple of shocks. Sea level raises, yes, but drought, as we see. This is 10 years ago, this book. So it could lead to other kind of Venices in the nearby future. And that could lead to certain zones in Europe where drought will dictate that soil or subsoil. That leads maybe to lower compositions of our rivers and our lakes. We can imagine that there will be crisis in our food industry. And that has enormous backlash. Imagine that there will be a milk crisis and all the milk products in the Netherlands would cease to exist. Synthetic soy milk becomes more in fashion to do that. And that leads to another kind of countryside in the Netherlands. We were talking about what happens if there is a disease. What 8 years later happened, basically, after this book. What could that mean? That in that disease you declare emergency of the avian flu. There is in the pandemic, there is a lot of kind of quarantine measurements. The Dutch are going to live apart more and more, the tendencies that are there, and in order to have another kind of urbanity. You have been talking also a lot about like living in the countryside, and somehow with new technology it was there. For the moment, I think it's needed to think in terms of density, because especially in Northwest Europe, there's not enough space for agriculture, forestry, and water management. So this density helps on the short term to solve some of our problems in terms of ecology, to do that. On the longer term, that might change. If we have technologies where I can freely fly or drive without any repercussion on energy, immediately we will have the widest sprawl. If any material in the future is biological, then it doesn't matter where we live, because we can, and it's adaptive, that could be done. So, but this would be a pre-step for doing that. Or another one, when a space lift is there, you know, there's this thing where it's about 10 kilometer high. It's actually a hanging element from a satellite, and that from where you can go to a potential, say, program on that 10K height. There's a moment that would lead basically to a zone around the planet where that would happen. That would around the equator, and somehow that would lead to new opportunities in, say, in Nairobi or in other places to facilitate this second skin that we are going to make in 100 years, 150 years, over time, over the future. And that would mean that, in this case, that places get also more attention and development, this belt around the equator. So dystopia can lead to new directions, is what it wants to say. But now how to steer utopia? You can do it by resilience, by the no factor, but I try to do it also with the yes factor, and that leads to an agenda. If I ask someone, a mayor, a question, don't you want to be responsible, open, curious? Most of the mayors, don't say everyone, says yes. And if you ask them, don't you want to be green, produce energy, produce water and food, oxygen and biodiversity, no one says no. In a Europe that is changing. And then you can make a list further. Who's against humanity or against socialness? Who's against intimacy, but also be open and accessible? But who is against democracy? Some are still. But freedom is, I think, a substantial component. Or adaptability. Also, we know that for our children and our grandchildren, that we need to do. Diversity becomes more and more a key factor. And also historic, yes. History we love, but new things are new. So they need somehow kind of update. And in the end, architects also, don't you want to be lovely or beautiful or exciting? Most of them say yes, not everyone. That's the cultural component that some of you say, and that you have to monitor. So in short, don't you want to be wonderful, is the question that we could, where utopia could come out of it. Then I have a shopping list of things that we have to deal with. And I want to illustrate that it needs to be done on all scales. Houses, yes, your production of houses can contribute to that, can make a place more wonderful, or more green, or more open. Toilets could be better if they are reproducing themselves on the spot. Then I don't need sewage systems anymore. But it has a magnificent effect on that way, all scales. And yes, our cities should do that. So what I will do now next is to show some examples. Chapter 4, open. If we want to have a society or a city of the future, we want to breathe. We want to breathe in cultural terms, and that was part of this shopping list that I read on top of it. And I show you some projects that are doing that. Porosity was an attempt to attack these monsters that are produced over the planet. These towers that are so introvert. There's one door, you go in, you go to the lift on top and go back, and that's it. And what can an architect do? Windows, a little bit, crown on top, but so boring and so asocial. So when one student made this Lego tower, and he said, boop, that was actually so beautiful symbol. How can we open up our environment? And what we try to do in this film, you see how if one student asks, can I, for instance, open the tower in step by step? As a kind of pregnant tower that turns it into this kind of central openness. If I can cut the tower, then I can hang wash in between everywhere. What is doable? If I can turn it, I have this beautiful porous element. You can do that in neighborhoods. I can do that in blocks like this, step by step, from nothing to maximum. Studying the amount of steel that I need, the amount of openness that it creates, the wind factor that comes in. That's what they studied. And if I put that in order from 0 to max, then I get this. Or here again, how it opens itself in the heart. And put them all next to each other, then I get a city which is like wonderful. This is more scientific or systematic than Manhattan. And so that I walk in the street of, say, the pregnant towers here on the first order. Or here, this kind of parasite towers that I could imagine. Or the street of polite towers, stairs that bring you up from the bottom to the top. Yes, you have to counterbalance it, and you have, in that way, a very, say, a human way of making a tower. That leads to that kind of city. So what is next? That was post-scripting, I would do. You start with intuition, what can you do? And then you do afterwards the scripting to put it in order. You can also do before, so pre-scripting. That means if I want to have a stair tower, these are my components on what to deal with it. You put it in your grasshopper, you see it, this is a section, how you can go from the bottom to the top with stairs. You put that in schematic, these are houses that are shifted with a certain angle because of the fire, and then you get this. You get something which is nicer than Escher sometimes in his paintings, and that you can walk from the bottom to the top and back again. If I want to make landscapes, same parameters come in. I decide to make landscapes like in the World Expo building in 2000, and then try to connect them, these landscapes, with these kind of angles. That leads to this sequence of grottos that kiss each other and that bring it to the top. Why didn't we do this? Why did we put so effort in maybe in density but not in quality? Quality that can be created for the social aspect, for the cooling factor of such a kind of pockets that could be imagined, or the ventilations that could be improved in that way. And that we try to steer in this book on porosity. How much does it cost? How much does it validate? And then you have a beautiful series that you can see now in Centre Pompidou. They bought it so to get it over there. We did something on it. It is doable. I think in the Mirador in Madrid, we tried to keep one block out in a floating soccer field over Madrid that cools the city. In 2005, we built Parkrand in Amsterdam, where these kind of pockets were inserted in a slab building and lead to these collective spaces. In 2006, we made Seleucia, where blocks of 4 units of houses were like put out, and that gardens would be in between, so that filters the air into the courtyard of this enterprise. So porosity is possible. Even after Le Corbusier, 50 years later, you can do, because this is very Corbusian, to do it. So what is next? I think the market hall, I want to see that also in perspective. That you use 2 slabs of houses and let them kiss each other, so that you have that they span over a space where you can, where groceries can be bought and where you can share it for so different, say, types of food and types of, say, celebrating that. They span it over, and you see how in this painting that we made is of the future of Food City, to make the windows, and these windows are actually and expensive, but so important, because these are here the private sheikhs, the public, or the investors below. They control, these 250 windows, control that the guys downstairs behave a little bit kindly. And they become like paintings in your bedroom, or in your working room, or in your patio on the top, where you can look down and your kid can play safely floating over the city. I thought we had that chapter already about fear. That was over, no? Technology can do that. So this is how it is, and how also part of the porosity chapter. PowerPoint 3. So where it is here. Aspect number, I think the one that you would love maybe the most, but then I come back. What's next? Freedom. It was on my list on that. And just some words before. In 2004, I made a small diagram about the migration world. If you look in that book and you see this chapter, then it was based on like looking, if we would open our borders, what would happen? So if you see the richness of one country, in this case the USA, and you divide it over the per capita, then there is a certain amount that expresses the wealth in a very simplistic way, I know, but just to help a little bit this controversy. China at that moment was basically in the very middle. Sierra Leone would be just almost nothing. And if you open the borders, there's a tendency of equilibration by 2 kind of streams, by people that move to something else, and by kind of import of people that go there to invest in those elements. That takes time. But in this equilibration would lead that the US would grow in this, that China would be more or less the same, and Sierra Leone would be empty almost. Then this would happen over the planet. Somehow you see two clusters appearing. Europe would be denser. The Netherlands, 55 million people. Finally, we become a little bit like Germany. So and Czech Republic, not so much, to be honest. Relief. So but it gives another kind of composition and relativation. Ideologically, I would be not against that. But fear dictates these norms. What's next? May. You have read it in the newspaper. You see this. This is the change in Europe because of opening up our borders. Ireland grows. Belgium grows. Blue still. France grows less. Dutch grow bigger. Finland. Germany goes smaller. Czechia, smaller. Estonia, dramatically smaller. Romania, 30% gone. Greece, Lithuania. So these are the expectations of that map that you have to deal with in our... I think it's fine. Please, this is the project that we are facing. That's liberty also, and freedom to go. So what is next? December 2018, we made this book, The Vertical Village, which tries to express another kind of way of dealing with this kind of production. If we build this sequence and you come as a couple and you look to type A, type B, type C, everything is the same, what can you do? Then only square meter will govern the cities. This is stupid with a generation that is more about diversity than ever before. So if you ask these people, I make a block, what do you like? And they choose this kind of houses, then to build on top of it, or turn that into the new, say, block. Wow, this is what I dream about. Here individualism comes together with collectivism. Here freedom settles with responsibility of a dense situation. And if that would be the juxtaposition, this would be the in-between space, porosity, I showed it before, to say what that could be, this vertical village. We try in Shenzhen to do that as a kind of message towards these other towers, which I really think that they are stupid to make in that way and try to make a vertical direction. We tried it for a long time in New York, and now it's just finished in 181st Street. Dominican neighborhood that wanted that our blocks somehow would be then stacked with a program and with colors of their environment, which leads to this juxtaposition. Cheap, it's not very expensive, but then how to deal with that and to make towers that you don't have in the midtown or in downtown, because there everything is glass or bricks. Here somehow now it yells out that this population here next to Washington Bridge is there. I go in, I see how these blocks come together, how the terraces create spaces. I love this wedding space. This is my favorite, with a view over Amsterdam Avenue towards completely down. It's a tearjerker for any marriage that you could imagine. And then to the courtyard. That's used now by the Dominican neighborhood to celebrate. I bring you to Rotterdam, also an example of this vertical village. We made this extension of the UNESCO neighborhood by montaging the new houses on top that can identify themselves in their own way. Here, a kind of small farm, you can say, where you live with your kids around this garden and have a view over the city. It yells out that we need to go further. This is not Photoshop, this is real. And yes, you can see it here in any tower that Rotterdam says we can do this in another way. I was fond on my stairs to give access because I hate this stupidity that you have to go inside, go up, go back again. You see this guy who is sitting there and no, you cannot go up. So but here you do it freely and you like to do it with friends and you enjoy the view and you photograph yourself on this new city level that we are then creating by itself. So that means that when this is this Bovenstad, this next city that we do, when this was the project for 2 months, 400,000 visitors, and then now it's like that this is the proposal to add now to it. That this station becomes interesting in the end. Our theater, nicely in the end. The department store, the Bijenkorf, the town hall, please do. Also, Jo Koenen has to help a little bit in this situation. Of course, I will do it also, no problem. This leads this summer to this activation of the NAI, where people climb the stairs, and then finally we have also our Corbusier in a pink way, celebrating this inclusivity, where we can look over the city, celebrate it. It was super nice this summer to do that. I dream that I can do it here on the Rudolfinum in the end. One stair on the Moldau and wappa, then I can invite you there up. When do we do that? Where are we waiting for that moment? Maybe we can help each other to get that done in that sense. I'm happy with the rooftop walk, also as a celebration of that villageism. This was this summer also, with the first long span bridge for pedestrians between two buildings. Finally, you can say that this film of this German guy in the 30s comes alive in Rotterdam. And so here you can see how it happens. You climb the stairs, go further, it becomes a village. Yeah, I know. And then find this point of making the step over the Koolsingel. Of course, people walk in the middle, they're a bit afraid in that way, some not, they celebrate it, and you are crossing this gutter, and then you see all the tests that we try to do to make this, to work with the roofs. It is every year, so I hope next year to come up with the next one. I'm not going to tell you yet what it will be. It will be fun to join and to get this finance together. This leads also to a policy. This is the map of the rooftop plan. So, on Wednesday, we discussed it with the minister. Where do we put these 900,000 houses in the Netherlands for the coming 10 years? So one of the operations is to use the roofs of all the schools, of all the public buildings in a way to facilitate somehow that. And that goes ahead with rules, as you can see on the left side, with a catalog of possible interpretation and with a vision that could look a little bit like that. So that this kind of extension is humanized and becomes a small scale. I go further with the chapter chapter. I theorize together with the Y Factory on we go. Why we go? Yes, it's from me to we. Because this is, I show the expression of individualism. That's there, it's fine, that's freedom. But how do we share then the space? And how do we make that we part? Here's some images of the landscapes of egoism that are there. You see my skyscraper in Mumbai. You see my jumbo jet in Scala. You see my personal suburbia in Johannesburg, or my islands in Dubai. You see my retreats in the Hamptons, or my swimming pools in Saint-Tropez. You see my proud dead ends of this story that is in these maps. How do we do that? Dream homes. So let's do a kind of Pinterest action of like mix all the styles that you want. You choose. You can do it. And so we did that with many partners to see what would that, if you pick that, you get such a kind of blender, a word that comes back in our team later. And here are some examples of what that could be. You tame the tone, percent, this how it is, and this is what I want. I mean, that's what you say you want. I don't know if you want it, but that's what it is. It helps for already mitigating a little bit this I factor. Let's extremize. If we become very egoistic, that means that I solve everything in my house. Tendency of COVID. So here you see how much food production I could do. I put a skin around it, and this is how I live. So where is my neighbor? Somewhere there. This is how we behave. Oh yeah, we meet sometimes for a soccer game. But then we go out of it each other well. The capsule life is coming there. So I try to mitigate in that way. So what was before, I think in the double house in Utrecht, here you see it, there is a weird house. We try to talk with the neighbors. What is the best composition on these 4 floors that you have? And that lead to this amalgam, this Chinese puzzle of living together, and actually to spaces that are beautiful and surprising because of the negotiation. In the Silodam, go to their website, you see that that's a complete juxtaposition of different neighborhoods. What some live in double high-story houses along a street, on a plaza, next to the canal, next to the harbor, and then they juxtapose itself to this cityscape. I still love it, because this makes it more pamphlematic in a way. We do it also in urban scale. Here's in Leiden, that's a small town in the Netherlands. I'm not allowed to say it's like the Pardubice of the Netherlands, but they love to build their own stuff. So you can see here we come together with each other. They select an architect talking with an architect, and the architect makes a house, and then plop, then you just do it. This is Baba 2, in a way. It's like, make it much more experimental, how it looked like, and then now the streets are there with these houses. Please visit them. One step further, Almere Oosterwold. Some of you have seen it. This is Amsterdam, Almere on the right side. Almere is used as an escape from Amsterdam, basically social housing, which is a problem, to be honest. Garden city feeling, going to be extended with another 150,000 people. This is one place, this polder, where it has to be done. So what we do, we keep agriculture at program, but you always have to do a piece of the cake. So you make a house, you have to do also to have an innovative, other kind of way of agriculture comes in, urban agriculture. So we monitor that by this software that is visible on the internet, and then you can develop alone or with more people, smaller and bigger. It always have the feeling that you are surrounded by agriculture, and you have to solve your own elements. The ground price is low, so what we do, if one plot is behind you, then you have to give the access for the neighbor behind you. That is in the rules. You have to solve your own water system. Currently under discussion in the newspapers. And you have to do your own energy. We transformed the energy companies in such a way that in this area, for ultimately 20,000 units, there is not this law that the government needs to give you the energy. This is article number 2 in the Constitution. So there was something. But then you can make what you want. Any shape. So you start here. This is a beautiful theatrical composition. There's a simulation, a Barba Papa house. There's a round one. And then you have to go. Urbanism, I cannot predict. This is literally off the grid. Not only in wording, but also in aesthetics. I drive around Barba Papa, I go around the cross to reach the other one. So this is done in a sequence in time that it grows until there. There is a website so that you can gather. There are people that group, and then they start to develop these pieces. They make a piece of agriculture. Here, some filters are made. The houses are done. This is the hydrophyte filter that comes in this area. This is staged by her. She's basically organizing the whole process, where you see the initiatives. This map, how it grows, and then people start to build. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, there is a road making, how it goes. This is the main street. One starts, then the other comes, then the road goes further. Then this guy wants to have more plot. So that's how it works, and that's done. Basically, how it helps. Of course, people don't know how to make a road. I know. So they organize themselves. They, I know this is highly under discussion in your country, but you could imagine this. It's somehow beautiful. So the pensionados of different kind came to help. They worked in a road society before, so now they do it. So here you see them at work, and they help to orchestrate any juxtaposition that comes alive. No sanitation, that means this kind of filters that are done in different ways with plants, with the whole cityscape. Heat pumps are everywhere to rain this new domain. New experiments are done by this Earthship couple that makes with these tires their house. There is Dacias where of architects evidently that produce these combinations to make it work. There is one client that makes this group house, beautiful thing by the way, with a farm on top. A specific pensionado that wants to make this loft homes very cheap that are there. The farmers come here. It's the person that has his orchards and makes this stuff. There are vineyards. There are chickens that are produced. There's a market now, all organized by themselves. There are chefs' tables that come in, and yes, there's also a school under organization. Is this good or is this bad? I think within the landscape of the Netherlands, it's good to make somewhere a place where you can do it yourself in order to see what comes out of that experiment. What is next? Let's do that, bring that also, because here people have to live together and make it together. So maybe forest, half. And but what happens in density? So here, a next chapter of the ego city, or ego city, a test with students, 17 students, 70 architects, 17 clients. Here you see the clients. And they have different dream houses. This is organized by this Pinterest exercise that I was expressing. Here a lazy guy that wanted to have a bowling alley and a bedroom, and which came out of these descriptions and this kind of modeling. I can do that also with immaterial character, and that leads to that house. So here you see all these dream houses. Normally you put them in a landscape like in Baba, so that it's free, nobody against it. But the interesting part, can we make Baba in this way? That they come together, and that the vertical Baba comes alive. That can then be a game. So we did different games to test that. And I show you one, the blind game. So here there are 17 participants are fighting to save their ideal. You start with it, you don't see the others, how it's going, and then it reacts on it over time, and how it in 20 minutes you're done. So this, of course, you have to be an equal gamer, that is fair. And here it's followed by the infrastructure. That comes and that follows always as an artery the composition. It's interesting to see how I would say what is the rate of say happiness that comes out of it. So in this case, you can see that the blind game is quite a good tool to work with that high percentage. That leads to this composition, this beautiful pattern of housing. Oh, I wished we could do this in somewhere. So that near the infrastructure part. But imagine that you're here in this purple house, and there's a corner in your house, weird corner. The neighbor must be weird also. So not only it negotiates, but also it hopefully makes you curious to go around and to find all these treasures. So we try to build it in Eindhoven on the design week, test a little bit on scale, access, and all the problematics of ductworks and bedding, and how that could be imagined in that way. So it can be one step further. That's, I think, futurism. You make it always, you explore a certain freeze, and then you go to a next step that you lead to it. So we were like, can we do it on the go? On the go, because then you can change it around. Let's imagine for a moment a hotel there where that, if this works, there it is. No, this doesn't work, don't matter. And where we can adapt it over time. This is balanced on this kind of, say, scripting. Here I am cooking, and how much space do I need for all my movements? It's analyzing. Here I cook together, and how much space do we need together? So if you look at the organization of every house, what it does, this is how they are interrelating in time. So what neighbor X is doing and neighbor Y is doing. Here you see that how it is moving in the program to see the conflict. So in black there are conflicts, and so in the seeding process, it's called in scripting, you find out the least amount of conflict. So it runs. Hey, this is a good seed. In the end. So it says where it optimized this combination. You try to simplify it, 3 to 2.5D, and then with this technique, this is over time how this process is going. So we do some boxes that move. This is a vertical section or elevation, and the boxes move to find their way on rails that come on the side. I will show it in a minute, to find the best, say, composition that belongs to that time of the day. If that is happening, poof, then there is a typical Friday afternoon. Most people come at home. This is the network. Some people are at home already and are cooking. There's one working on some things. So they group themselves and give this your access to your house. I don't need stairs. And I move to my zone there. I need a kitchen, properly accessed with a table, and it comes to you. It was. How to do that then? Technically, there's a rail that you have, and how these boxes go around and find their way of maneuvering to the area. The components. And now it leads to this prototype that we make. So this is a house, I would say, in the best tradition of house making, but in a way that this we-go feeling, this art of being together, can be celebrated with each other. What is next? My conclusion for today. There it goes. Because one thing I have not been talking about more on this list, and that's green, and which was part of the operation. So what is next? And I think when I was watching the BBC film on Chernobyl, then I was like also fascinated by the fact that nature can take over, and that somehow with all the bad things that happen and happen there, it becomes something interesting. That it becomes more and more kind of forest where new say cohabitations are happening. So somehow this is a spirit that touched the world, and when it was on our screens. This was also one of the things to work on the Green Dip, a book that comes out in March, where we look what we can do with our urban areas. I told already about the density that we need the coming time. In total, our city is as big, everything together, as India. Or if you push it in one building, it's the same size as Madagascar. But Madagascar is for 56% currently and 68% in short time of the world population. And they're responsible for 70% of the CO2 emissions, 60% of total freshwater consumption, and almost the majority of energy use. Wow. If we take this into a compensation, then I need 3 times the globe to work it out in all these matters. So this dream of transforming Hong Kong in something like that could be interesting. Or to give my my former employer a new context, I could imagine that kind of dream, that also Beijing would do this. So to make this green maker, this software, when you open it up, you see the species of the world, and every species in every biome has an amount of things it needs and an amount of things it gives. It needs soil, maintenance, cost. It gives oxygen, water, evaporation, temperature drop, and that counts for every species in every. And then you combine it with products. You go to the future IKEA, and you see this kind of things that help you to make this environment. Better roofs, better balconies, better ductwork, I could imagine. If you then open up a canvas, let's say Manhattan, and I tried to cover it with the species and these products, and I do that for anything, for the tops, for the walls, for the interiors, and for the outside space, then this would be my new Manhattan, and which gives something to the world back of what they do. And I dream at that moment of like a city in Fifth Avenue would be finally nice and have this kind of experience on and this kind of interiors. Dubai would make sense maybe if we think about that kind of situations in a specific manner. And that leads to, if you calculate that for every city, then this would be basically the results of what it would give and would take. And it gives 1 degree of temperature drop, plus minus, for the whole planet. But it's something, I would say, to give it on our agenda. So what is next? I forgot my animals. And the biodiversity class is now making this book on making this pyramid of fruit and food chains. And then if I want to have the bear later in Bratislava, then I need that kind of amount of animals to do that, and that kind of space to do that. It calculates that, combines it with products, how to facilitate the bear or the smaller animals in it, and put it on the canvas. You see, again, a repertoire of new products that change the facade in a new habitat, here of a wolf, and the roof for it, and also the interior, other kind of walls that facilitate fishes in this case. And that leads to more beautiful cities, where these people and these animals can be also my clients, is what it wants to say. And what is next? I think in Rotterdam, when we work on this site with a lot of water, what the museum suffered from this, we made this depot on this spot, quite a big thing. So we made it round in the park so that you can walk around. We make it smaller so that it doesn't touch the water level. It becomes almost like an ark of Noah, and make the ceiling at the top a bit bigger so that you have a viewpoint, and that you can replant all the trees that we have taken away, and that you can then celebrate it. I think this was an important moment in the project to show that we can continue with environment by mirroring it, and the curvature helps to look to the plaza, but also to look around the corner or to the sky, and then you would have this. The most important part in the context of this chapter is, of course, the roof forest that we could make, which we could study as a substrate of 1.5 meters, to have that on, train our trees for 4 years to make flat roots, and then you lift them up. It's a bit like you roll your hair up and put them together, and you put them again, and you spread the roots, they contact each other, and you have a new, network in the soil, and that leads now to this kind of plantations on the roof. And I'm happy that we could test that. So use any spot to test that agenda, I would say. Also in Amsterdam, recently, in this La Défense of the city, which is basically a monster of mirrored buildings and no life on the streets, we are asked to make 3 towers and a plinth. And we said, maybe it's better to crawl away a little bit, to make terraces and bay windows, pockets and extensions, so that we can regulate the wind, and that we can have a combination of intimacy for plants and for people, and exposure for social togetherness, and that reaches from the bottom to the top in its contextual facade. Done with Piet Oudolf, another technique we are applying. Which makes this into an object in this landscape that commends the city on that way by this coverage of nature that comes alive soon. Some of you have seen it and how it's now there. How this scraped away gives space for plants and for a public path that brings you from the bottom higher up along the plants that are trained by Piet Oudolf, and then you can look again downstairs to the grotto which is there. It's nice that this was part of a dream of the developer to do this. So to transform, this is actually, he did it so without asking. And this is what I could imagine in that way. And what was nice the last weeks on Dutch television that the 2 ladies that make the gardens are interviewed. And they're a combination of alpine persons with horticultural experience that do it now. And they train the plants, go into it. That's what it costs. Is that too much? And every developer says, yes, you can't afford it. No. Maintenance is part of our society. So you have to do that. Can we do that more in Tainan? This is Tainan in Taiwan, which looks ugly, basically. It's completely gray. And we are asked to do something with this Chinese department store, which we basically cut away, keep the remnants, and flood it with water, so that there is a kind of cooling the bubble within the city, with trees that keep it over there. From the very beginning, people liked it. The temperature drop is sincere of this urban pool. It changed a little bit the cultural component. Taiwanese people, especially older people, they're not like Danish that want to swim half naked in the public space. But it's happening. It starts with the children, goes to the students, and now daddy is also participating, as you can see on these slides. And how it is, recent pictures, how in the evening it becomes this kind of component where you can hang out. The technique is sincere, how to do that. With what kind of pebbles do I do that? How do I do the cleaning? What do I do when there is dengue and I have to get rid of the mosquitoes? You have to lower the water at that moment and then they go away. Don't worry. So that's all tested about it. And then
Not many adults in the water, right?
imagine the future Staromescu Namesti like this. And it would be, then you would have a cool part now in the city. So what is next? I think the Tainan Market Hall, the same place, is mainly a farm with a market below. And looks like that. Very simple in a way. So there it is. A couple of weeks ago, how it's now structured. And how we are working now on that roof to get people there up with the different contour lines to make that farm on the top and that restaurant over there. So any project might help. That's what I want to say. And it's more than green. I also in Taipower, a new office building on the coast of Taiwan, facing mainland China. On this site, with this envelope, we had to subtract. We try to maximize it for solar production, and that leads to this cutting away, to this shaping, and then to a covering of the panels that are oriented towards the perfect direction. And you get this solar rock on the coast of Taiwan that says hello to everybody that wants to go there. Yes, also the doors are part of it. Also the windows are doing it. And then I can do a kind of hyperbole, because everybody makes solar panels, I know. But when to make it more apparent? And we need these hyperboles to make it more visible. We have to exaggerate, is what we want to say. And also in Shanghai, a building where we cover this with this carpet of solar panels that create this a space in between where a kind of climatic shell can be done, and how a couple of weeks ago the start of the building was happening. I bring you to a larger scale on that. The Almere Floriade. Some of you maybe have been there. It's again in Almere. I'm not going to into it. We won this bid 10 years ago with making a horticultural World Expo on this site. This is the site as it was. On the right side, the center of Almere, designed by Rem Koolhaas, and on the left side, our extension of density. So this is the view from my side to Rem, and this is, I dream about, is the view from Rem to me, in showing a little bit the change in time that we are facing. We did it in this way, with this kind of island or reconstruction, where I believe that plants should be the main and key factor for the show, but also for the life aftermath. With tulips, yes, with wisteria, with oaks, with bamboo, using the different techniques, and that every species is on a plot. And they come together in this puzzle, so that I have a good orchestra space, or a better sport, or this is, I think, the best clubbing I can imagine, or the best sleeping. And if you juxtapose this in endlessly, I get this collection. It's what it wants to be. If this is the site, here it shows. A mini grid city, tiny grid, only 20 by 10 meters, where I can expose these thousands of species to everybody. This is the map. These are my main drivers. If I go closely, alphabetically, here all the species are shown and placed from A in the north to the Z on the left, where they love the buildings, or the buildings should love them, and where this is the view from the boulevards that surround it. Again, scripting comes in. I advise you strongly to work on this computation part, to give the coding to the species. This is letter A, how it goes from A till Z, how it leads to this barcode, ultimately, of plants that forms this composition. Buildings, idem dito, make pixels that can drive on the base of that green dip, these buildings that help to show the plants also in their cohabitation with the houses. Here we train the plants again. We show every species. We did this in Delft to test how many rooting do they need, and then bring it to the Floriade to show what that could be done. Then I get nice renders, different renders on how that would look like. And we started with the public space. You can see it here in the wider streets, the narrower streets, and the plantation on the, of the arboretum on all the sides. And that leads to this element. We work bridges that are completely recyclable and are made with plants instead of without plants. We have the boulevard that goes all around. We have a loop to combine it with all the, say, cities around it. We make plazas with different landscape architects that are celebrating the mixing chambers of this species. And then we make the buildings. Some are horrible. And of course, something worked not out with some of the developers that are there. Some are better. These woodies are quite good to do that. The central building was a nightmare. It was social housing, and the operator didn't want to do anything. And we said this could be only a building where all the species come together, and they should show us the catalog. We tried to do it with plants. They refused it. So the only thing we could do to make a painting of glass with all the collection imprinted in here on the facades. Here it's how it showed how people live in it, and how the legenda, the key on the lower floor, explains where the positions are of all the plants and what we can do. We made an art center that is dedicated to water cleaning with these basins, and that houses this exploitation of films on what a bio world could be. I still love them, to work with these artists and to see that this could be a vertical village, some sort of, where the stories that I was just explaining come together. That such a kind of simple test of what are the connection lines of feeding between the species leads to this kind of, I would say, very funny and beautiful films. Or how that also goes ahead in the sky and turns it into a sky city at a certain moment. Or how the production of the elements are connected with each other and leads to this kind of sorting devices. I love the German pavilion because they were daring to make paintings of how Bonn would look like, one of the most boring places in the world, and how they could imagine that fusion of it. I think for some of us it was a helpful tool. I love the Amsterdam Almere pavilion because it's completely recyclable and it tries to study ecology by a mix of plants. And that's what we have to do, because like the pixel forest is so important because species work together. This is diversity to the max. And that is the new species how they could live together is very well studied in their pavilion. I take you to the House, which is basically a structure where any biological material is tested in all its composites to see it in the fragments of these houses. I take you to the school where we cover it with this kind of stuff. I take you to the wooden pixel, which is a test of with especially the nodes to make a flexible system to work on this method that I was describing. And that leads, I think, to a beautiful space where, again, the infill is testing this new material, this next nature habitats on this kind of, say, products, or the seawood material, which is harvesting pieces of the sea of the Netherlands. That's the base. It's just closed, this Floriade, with a lot of critique and a lot of discussion, but it's there. And I hope that you have that in mind. There will be always critique. As long that it is not clear that the critique is more than 50% of the population, go on, I would say. Because that is somehow the way how we distill our, and now with this base, we work on the densification, and say 3,500 units will come now soon on this strategy to bring it further. And then an expo makes sense. Then the horror in Hanover, when nothing happened afterwards, is somehow compensated in this effort. And what's then next? Well, now I go further, because now we did this, but we have to speculate on the future, the trends that are there, and how to study trends. If you see what drones are doing, they do a lot maybe at the moment, but they will reduce if we find another kind of transporter in the biological material that comes into it. Automation will be a constant factor the coming time in these graphs. So there's many things that describe the future in technology, and that goes ahead with inventions. Algae facade, nice. in Hamburg, but we need more kind of species to grow with that plankton in our facades, the energy as well as the cooling. And I can imagine that gradually a city will look like that if we start to look at it. If I want to have self-healing concrete, super important to repair, I need these inventions to go 200 years to make that believable. And that will change the city also. And gradually we repair our concrete, we alternate and we turn it into other, say, beauties. This would be a dream. Or if it's breathing our buildings and the skin, helping the oxygen level in the city, then I need these products to make that even more believable. And then gradually these breathing towers will help to accommodate our climate change. And 3D printing is nice, but in the future we need smaller elements to print it on time on every spot, like bees that repair our substance and that gradually turn this kind of accommodation. But we also need unprinting to redo the material that comes out of it, and that process is done. We can bet on champignons, on mushrooms, but there are more species that help gradually to make this rhizome that transforms the concrete production into something which is wilder and inclusive for nature and for all the elements that are there. And if we want to use plants, then I have to change the DNA of plants. I have to, the lignin production or the woodification have to be helped and unhelped. The branching has to be helped so that maybe in the end we start with Stefano Boeri, but then gradually we make it into much more bigger fantasy where I would like to make this kind of sponge that goes over the planet and gradually turns it into a breathing green environment. And that would transform a blue planet into a green one. That is accompanied with all these processes that we need and that some of you are now studying. That needs, this doesn't work as a film. No. Oops. This is terrible. No. And that leads to a planet that somehow this is done with Tonic, this advertisement, to show that it can be much more vivid, active, and spatial. And then, somehow, not everything was urbanism, everything became landscape, is what you have witnessed, I think, in this lecture. And that leads to an observation that that Yuval made in Sapiens, where biology enables, culture forbids. There was someone this afternoon talking about culture a lot. But it's a nice quote, I would say, from a biological perspective, nothing is unnatural, is what this is stressing. And with that, I come into chapter number 7, where I dream about biotopia, basically. From utopia and dystopia into this biotopia, where we use this year to think about that and to bring that together. We started in this first semester by designing the biggest house thinkable, design the world. We used some slogans to understand that you did, that you hang up, that you maneuvered through the space, but it somehow reminds us during this half year of what we are doing. And what is next? We work on the design with nature, towards nature instead of outside it, and define then this biotopia. What is it? A world that is fully biological, quickly and responsively degradable, adaptable, hyper-green and cool, with an updated synergy and ecosystem of built and non-built, of man and nature. How does it look like? Small film on Baba Papa. Baba Papa was a transformer, basically. Do you see how I sleep in that way and I need this space to breathe? I know, it's a bit claustrophobic, but it's conceptual. So what happens if I stand up? This stuff push me up, like in Charlie Chaplin's film, and I need space before. How big is that space that I basically need? I walk, and the space walks with me. It closes itself in the back after a couple of minutes. If I want to look up, yes, I can. I can do the information. If I need light, I want to do that. And I remember that Hermann Hertzberger told also me, make windows that does this, that you do this feeling, because that helps the gymnastics, but also the beauty of opening up. Can we create stuff that can do that? If I want to meet someone, here my son, his dog, How can it open itself and mitigate on that same second? If I wash my hands, I think pipeworks we don't need. Everywhere, this rubber, this material guides water to you so that you can do that. And yes, I can jump wherever I want and find this pool next to me. That is so I swim in this space, this temporal space. There's light coming from a distance. And this section shows and shows also the question: who is moving? Is my house moving, or am I moving? Is what this basically is, and that is the contradiction I think that happens over time. We split again. Son goes to school. I need a shower. It's Peter Zumthor avant la lettre. We can do that. We can copy any architect. Don't worry at that moment to do that. Clothes come to you, natural clothes in that way, grown by. I can select any jeans from that self-growing collection. I go further. I want to cook. Products come, given by the trees and by the chains of transports that are there. The material is cooking, boiling, and I can cook over there. So this film describes every minute of the day how we face flexible space, how we face minimal space in different tools. What was nice in the Kunsthalle a couple of weeks ago, that somehow you did it in the Light Festival in a more biological way. So you see films, still light, not there but beautiful, that somehow dream about this kind of transformative Barba Mama, ultimately, that we would like to make. And what is then next? We hope to have, in the beginning of January, an exhibition. We are aiming to add cables on the walls so that you can use it afterwards freely to hang everything in these atriums in that moment. So we go further with, I would like to have an invitation to invite the professors to come together and talk about methodology, express it over dinner a little bit and compare each other and say what is good and what is bad in a way and notate about that. That would be accompanied with that. What's the next? Then the semester 2 starts. And now we don't design the world anymore, then we design Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic in that way. Maybe a little bit of Slovakia because I have some troubles with the Tatra. So there is a... we'll see how far we come in that way. And to apply that in that way. There will be a workshop in May coming up, the CZ workshop, where with Archip, with the university in Liberec and in Brno, we are trying to fantasize on that combination, so that it will be then used as an exhibition in the end of the year. And what's then next? My final quotes, an epilogue. This was what I am trying to do. I only talked about 3 components today. So there's work to do, and it should be continued. Děkuji. Wow. Thank you very much. Any questions? No, of course, this is, I don't want to intimidate. Of course, this kind of complexity needs time. I'm happy to respond to anybody, for better and for worse, because nothing to lose anyway. So there's but we have a beer still, I think, here next door, so we can have a drink. But there was someone who, you saw someone?
No, not yet.
Do you have a question? Otherwise, you can post them in another way, just on our website or in the room.
We have 4 questions.
Okay.
I think my mic is not working.
I can tell. Oh, there are questions coming in. Yeah. Is there a space for an individual's ego in the future world? I hope I expressed a little bit in this combination of freedom and responsibility, the contradictions of the two. And the issue of responsibility is a hard one. It's very political. Has to do with self-learning and self-experience. And but without individual expression, no world in the future also. So that is, I think that our architecture at the moment is not giving enough expression. We do open bouwen, open building processes, which are already nice. I love the Baugruppe in Germany as a way of dealing with it. And I think it's good that the Dutch government gave like 10% of the build production should be on a Baugruppe and co-op base. And I think you have to do that also. So that's to explore the unknown and to explore the collectivities. Second question, what do you think will be future of architects with rising abilities of artificial intelligence? I'm not afraid of a doom scenario that architecture would not exist. Don't worry. The only thing what is much more stupid is to react with a kind of defense mechanism. So on one hand, yes, you have to, according to me, universities have to dedicate themselves to this artificial intelligence in somehow, to build up criticism as well as knowledge, so that you can collaborate with the engineers on this. So we have to do that in-house in that way. And yes, space is a tool. And to make spatial evaluation, both in beauty as in the other categories that I showed, is needed to put in to do something with this artificial intelligence before it's too late. I think we are already a little bit too late. And to criticism, I think there is a generation of people that think, oh, I have to sketch, fine, and that say we don't need that. And there's also a generation of, say, deans that were too late to accommodate this kind of scripting element. There's also a generation of faculty that works in the computer science world that is not able to think in space, that we have to help also a little bit to make them out of the Revit program only issue. So it is there's things to do to make this question, say, redundant. How do you compare mentality of Czech students to Dutch, even after a few months here? The good thing is it's just short now. So this is political. The studio is super nice because people want to work in a way. No, compare it not with Dutch, but with Yale or Princeton or Harvard. The students are so spoiled that they don't let them go, that they talk so long and don't produce. I think that is not completely happening here in the studio that I experienced. So I do hope that is, and the Dutch in a way, I know that there's also a lot of, say, elitism already in the Netherlands, and that you get spoiled after a certain moment in education. But yeah, that's what we have to deal with it. I also witness a lot of skepticism on the other hand, not in this generation, but especially in the older generation. As you propose something, then first people say no. No, not possible. It's culturally not good. Blah, blah. So that's what you hear immediately. The skepticism, I can understand partly of a generation that comes out of an epoch in communist times where it was raised basically the sensation of being skeptical to the systematics, and that is sometimes happening. So not on the students I see it, but somehow in my environments when I look at that. Skepticism can be good if it's productive, and if we can talk about it, what is the driver behind it, and what's the perspective of it. If skepticism kills development, I would not advise it, and then I leave Czechia, obviously, and if that would happen. Don't you find problematic the difference between visualizations, models, utopian thoughts, and the reality afterwards? Of course, it's very painful sometimes that you suggest something and you don't win, or they screw it up, like the first building in Tirana, in the widest sense. How can you deal with that is more the question behind this, because that will happen anyway. Crisis, this 20 crises of this summer, I didn't expect them. or maybe I should have expected a little bit more because of the research we do. But yeah, you have to give it a place in life. And it's a disappointments and things that half work. One thing is do a lot of things, because the percentage of success can be also related to the amount of production that you do. Never bet on one horse, as the Dutch would say, but do a lot of horses so that you can do that parallel. Find collaboration so that you can share appointments and disappointments is what I would mention. And be super, how can I say that, sharp in thinking about because sometimes a deception is also fruitful. I would not say that, say the current, real estate crisis has also its good elements in it. And immediately put them in your projects within the next and comment on that from that perspective with all the knowledge that you have. I think that's the souplesse that we need to have in life and especially in architecture, which is domain of frustration and but also of glory and of beauty. So that is how to deal with that. And I hope that gives a bit of a reflection of the questions that you had. Thank you for posing them. This helps me also to formulate a little bit these nuances. Now I need a drink. I see you there.
Thank you very much, Winy. Thank you for starting this November talks, and thank everybody for coming. And if you need to repeat it, it's going to be on the YouTube channel of the faculty. Thank you.
Okay.